Hi again, Dave Kites from the OTOW Woodshop. This evening we're making a video about this little spline cutting jig. The spline cutting jig is used if you have made a box, regardless of what kind of joints they are, and you want to put saw cuts in here so you can put different colored, usually pieces of wood in there as splines for a decorative effect in the corners of your box. So this jig helps you cut those splines. Well, not the splines, it helps you cut the slots for the splines. You still got to make the splines. So it's going to be kept on a shelf behind the drill presses down the other end of the shop. And so I'll just start now and set it up like you would if you went and got it, retrieved it, brought it here, and you're ready to put it in there. And now I'm in the process of setting up this spline cutting jig. I've put the small riving knife in, which is kept in the caddy on the saw, as most of you know by now. So I put the small riving knife in. Now I've got some stops here. These are going to go in the slots, and you're going to set the back edge of this slot that does not have the writing on it, even with the back edge of the table. And that will stop the jig when it's finished cutting, but before it goes too far and cuts the blade protector. It's not protecting the blade, it's protecting you from the blade, but the little house-like thing here that the blade gets protected, I don't want to saw through it. So I want to put these stops in. Put one there. You got to put these in first because they are T-shaped. They don't drop down in the slot. They slide in the slot and take advantage of the wide shape at the bottom, which is put in there for things that you need to hold down tight to the table. That allows you to do that. These, I just want to hold the stop down tight to the table. So you put these two in. One would actually work, but I made two, so anyway. So those are there. Now this will just drop in, plunk. Now when you push it through, you're going to hit those stops, and it's going to stop before the blade saws this piece apart, which we don't want to do. So again, this fixture has that's where the saw blade travels, and we want to stop here, and that's why we got those stops. It has two tracks, and it goes this way. Obviously, this little house here has to go in the back side, so the slot goes in the front side. So there you go. Okay, now you got to do a little thinking and figuring before you get started on your splines. You got to decide how many splines you want in your box. So the instructions that I wrote here, they're going to be with the jig. They're based on this spline pattern, which is, if this is going this way, it goes across, splines are going here. Starts with a half of a space and then has even big spaces that are double that size, and then ends with a half of a space. So if you're willing to use that pattern, these instructions will tell you exactly how to do it, and I'll show you how to do it. What you do is you find a spacer size, and the spacer size is this length total divided by how many splines you want. So this is 6.5 inches, and I decided I wanted 5 splines. So I divided, and I get 1.3 inches. So I need a spacer that's 1.3 inches wide, and I made one. Okay. Then I need to know what a half of a space is, so we divide by 2. It's 0.65 inches, which is real close to 5/8. So we can use a regular ruler and get to 5/8. This, if you want to make exact, you can use your vernier and just sand it, saw it until you get it just the right width. So I did that. So that's how you do that. Okay, so we figured out our spacer, and we've got the S/2 dimension in mind, and now we want to put the box in the spline cutting jig, and we want to raise the blade because we want to set the height of the blade. Most people want their spline to not come inside the box. See, the piece of wood's going to be right in here, see, and it's going to stick up. And if it sticks up too high, it'll stick up past here. So we'll put this here and find the highest point of the blade, which I think is right about there. And just make it so that that comes just under the corner. Okay? Just under the internal corner here, the height of the blade. So when I cut the corner for the spline, I won't cut into the inside of the box. So that's about right, I think. Okay. So now we've got the blade height set. Now we're going to put the box in position. And the first thing we want to do is go back in here now with the blade up in the right place and measure that S/2 dimension, which was 5/8 of an inch from the center of the blade to this side of the stop. Which is right about there. Okay. Pull this back out, put the box in, up against the stop. And now you see that's in position to cut S/2 distance into the center line of the spline on all four corners, and then turn it over and cut the other four corners. But we'll do that in a minute. Then you want to move this stop over here. Second stop helps you avoid having the box drift away when you rotate it, or you might come away from this stop accidentally. But now it can't. So now I am really ready to saw the first spline on this end on four corners, and then I'll turn it around and cut on this end on four corners. And I'll be stopping when I hit my jigs. So it's very simple. So I'm going to do that. Yeah, this jig was made by a member, I'm just waiting for the saw, a couple, I don't know how many years ago. Anyway, and it was nice and it was sturdy and solid, and he had these tracks in here, and he had most everything. He didn't have very good runners, so I improved those. He didn't have a guard for the blade, so I put that in there. And he had some stops that were not, well, they didn't reach up very high, so they were a little bit small. So anyway, I fixed up those things. So now we're ready. Got to shorten that delay on that vacuum system. So I did the four corners on this end, and then of course, since it's a symmetrical pattern as I showed you before, I could just switch it around and do the four corners on the other end. But to save a little time in the video, after you finish those, okay, you leave your box in there with both stops up against it, and then loosen this one. Move it over. Take your spacer that you made, put it there, put that stop back up against it, then take your box out and the spacer out, move your box over to the spacer that you just relocated, and then bring the other spacer over again to hold it in place so it doesn't drift away on you from this one. And now you're ready for the next round of spline cuts. And you just push it through and cut them. I'll do that. we did it second round. Again, you would just, because it's symmetrical, you can just turn the box over and cut the second round on the other end. I only had 5 splines, so if I had done these two and these two, I'd only have one left in the middle. So how do you get that guy? Well, the same way. You just repeat, loosening the first stop, move it out of the way, put the spacer in, put it back, tighten it in its new position, take everything out, put the box back, bring the other spacer over, and we're ready for the next and final, in this case, round of cuts. And I would just cut them. So you don't have to use this pattern. You can figure out any pattern you want and just use the stops to position it. You can make pencil lines if you want to make a funny pattern, or do SOS codes or something there. I don't know what you want to do, whatever you want to do. You can just make the marks there, but you'll have to try to line them up. You can see where the cut is down here. So if you had something like that going on, you could just loosen the 2 stops, move the box until it was, you could see, oh yeah, that pencil line's right in the middle of the saw blade now. So now I'll move this stop over and tighten it, and now it's in the right place. So then I can bring my other one in, put the box down here, bring the other one in, boom, and it'll be right. So then you can just repeat that, looking and moving and stopping, and put any kind of pattern you want in there. Some people like to use a backup piece to prevent tear out. Tear out's not generally too bad in this kind of operation because this slot never gets bigger. And so the widest it's going to get is 1/8 of an inch, because that's the widest kerf blade we've got in the shop. So you're not going to get much tear out anyway. If you do put a backup piece here to keep, it'll end up holding your box up like this, and you will have to increase the height of the blade. So remember when we set the height of the blade, we put the box in here and we went over here and made sure it just came up just below the inside corner. If I put a piece of wood in here for backup to avoid splintering, now I'm going to have to raise the blade some more. Okay. If you get a thick box and you've got backup and you raise the blade, we're going to end up cutting this jig way up high. And that's really not, I've got this metal separated so it won't trip anything or it won't do bad, but it's not going to be as solid anymore if we cut away a whole bunch of this wood here. So I hope we don't end up doing that. I don't think of anything else. Oh yeah, these instructions, 3 pages, they'll be here. Pictures and words, and tell you how to do what I just went through. Okay, simple little jig. Decorate your boxes.